In the beginning, fellow humans, to whom a year is a long time, a century a venerable goal, struggling for your bread, tired, fretful, tricked, sick, lost. Listen, and it may be mockery and consolation. 20 billion years before now, brilliant, soaring in space and time, there was a ball of flame, solitary, eternal. Our common Father and our executioner, it exploded, and every change began. Even now, the thin echo of this one reverse catastrophe resounds from the farthest reaches. From that one spasm, everything was born, the same abyss that enfolds and challenges us, the same time that spawns and defeats us. Everything anyone has ever thought, the eyes of every woman we have loved, sons by the thousands, and this hand that writes.
The world we experience is larger than our values. The sun rises and sets. The tide approaches and recedes, indifferent to our needs and desires. The world we experience is also smaller than our values. We could imagine a much better world, a world where good behavior is always rewarded and bad behavior always receives justice. The natural world and the physical universe have tremendous power, but no ethics. In the end, we are the ones who give meaning to life. No one tradition, no one people owns the one true understanding of the human experience. As we mark Yom Kippur, the peak of the Jewish New Year, we know that we learn from our people and from many peoples. We support the needs and encourage the dreams of our people and many peoples. We share the human condition, finite, limited, challenging, and therefore all the more preciously beautiful. We all live in many identities: our individuality, our humanity, our gender, our generation, our Judaism. When we celebrate our deepest selves, we honor them all.
The sages and rabbis and ordinary Jews of our ancestral tradition were not humanists, yet their attention to the importance of human action, to ethics between people, is a human focus that we share. We do not create our past in our image, projecting modern values into the ancient worlds. Thus, when we do find an early example of our emphasis on human action and human power, it is not wrong to celebrate it. If we believe in evolution, for biology or for culture, then our ancestors are also a part of us. You shall not judge unfairly. You shall show no partiality. You shall not take bribes, for bribes blind the eyes of the discerning and upset the pleas of the just. Justice, justice shall you pursue, that you may thrive.
Is this not the fast that I have chosen? To loose the chains of wickedness, to undo the bands of the yoke, and to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? Is this not to share your bread with the hungry, and that you bring the poor who are cast out to your house? When you see the naked, that you cover him, that you hide not yourself from your own flesh? Then shall your lights break forth like the morning, and your health shall spring forth speedily, and your righteousness shall go before you. Rabbah says, the merit of repeating a tradition lies in the understanding of it. Our Papa says, the merit of attending a house of mourning lies in the silence observed. Marzutra says, the merit of the fast day lies in the charity dispensed.
Rabbi Hillel would say, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? And if I am for myself alone, what am I? And if not now, when?
When human self-awareness began, we were at the mercy of forces far beyond our control. We died in infancy and in childhood. Natural disaster and disease ruled our lives, and we trusted ancestral tradition more than our own discoveries and insights. It is no wonder that so many peoples in so many cultures turned to magic and mystery in hopes of turning fate a few small steps to their favor.
Today, in many ways, we have the power we once imagined our gods did. We heal the sick, bring sight to the blind, feed the hungry, and comfort the afflicted. We are not perfect, but then again, neither were our gods. We cannot heal all wounds and prevent all disasters, and neither did they. If lightning still strikes, we are better able to predict it and to face its consequences. The length and quality of our lives are many times greater than in the beginning. Testaments to the power of human insight and invention. Our natural world may now be understood and enjoyed rather than feared. When your children ask you, "How did this come to pass? Why is today so much better than long ago?" you can tell them it was the power of people that changed the world.
I invite you to rise if you're comfortable doing so as we learn from the wisdom of our people. Thank you. Please be seated. Our reading today is from the end of the book of Kings, chapter 25. And it came to pass in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came, he and all his army, against Jerusalem, and encamped around it, and they built forts against it round about. So the city was besieged unto the 11th year of King Zedekiah. On the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine was sore in the city, so there was no bread for the people of the land. Then a breach was made in the city wall, and all the men of war fled by night by way of the gate between the two walls, which was by the king's garden, now that the Chaldeans were against the city round about. And the king went by way of the Arabah. But the army of the Chaldeans pursued after the king, and overtook him in the plains of Jericho, and all of his army was scattered from him. Then they took the king, and carried him up to the king of Babylon, in Riblah, and they gave judgment upon him. And they slew the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, and put out the eyes of Zedekiah, and bound him in bonds, and carried him to Babylon. Now in the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which was the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babylon, to Jerusalem. And he burned the house of Yahweh, and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, even every great man's house, he burnt with fire. And all the army of the Chaldeans that were with the captain of the guard broke down the walls of Jerusalem. And the residue of the people that were left in the city, and those that fell away, that fell to the king of Babylon, and the residue of the multitude, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, carried away captive. But the captain of the guard left of the poorest of the land to be vine dressers and to be husbandmen. If you think Jewish current events are bad, now you know it has been much, much worse. The destruction of Jerusalem, the burning of the temple, the Babylonian exile, these were unmitigated disasters for ancient Judea and the Judeans. They had seen the destruction of their partner kingdom Israel 130 years before, and they feared the worst long-term result. In Psalm 137, they sang, "How can we sing our song in a foreign land like Babylon?" A generation before the destruction, the Judeans had fully merged their religion and their national identity under King Josiah. After this destruction, how could Judeanness survive without a king, without a territory, without a temple? We know today they succeeded. We are still here reading their story and using their language, what the book of Kings called Yehudit, Judean, what we call Hebrew. Our beliefs and our practices are very different. No king, no Jerusalem temple, no high priests, and for many centuries, no territory either. We were Jews without Judea. Today, we look to that same ancestral homeland as our roots and as a home for many of our people, without needing to live there to be who we are. There are Jewish lessons from exile and wandering, just as there are Jewish lessons from sovereignty. Over the centuries, there have been many Jewish destructions and rebuildings. We have reinvented our identity, our culture, our lifestyle, our community again and again. In the 20th century, a modern Jewish state was reborn, yet the Jews remained a world people. Some of us carried forward lessons of revenge. Psalm 137 ends with a violent wish. It says, "Fair Babylon, you predator, a blessing on him who repays you in kind what you have inflicted on us. A blessing on him who seizes your babies and dashes them on the rocks." Others of us have learned lessons of coexistence. Self-defense, of course, but also aspiring to live each under their vine and fig tree, with no one to make them afraid. It has been worse in the Jewish experience, but knowing that does not make today better. Knowing that we can rebuild, knowing that we will survive, knowing that our will is stronger than the forces against us, those do make us feel better. Remember the pain and the challenge, and then sing our song and live our life. Please rise as we return our Torah scroll to the ark.
Family loyalty does not impede wider attachments, and connections with the wider world are not a betrayal of family loyalty. We are at once members of the Jewish people and participants in the world of human experience. Who says we cannot do both?
Debate with the rabbi. "You've lost your religion," the rabbi said. "It wasn't much to keep," said I. "You should affirm the spirit," said he, "and the communal solidarity." "I don't feel so solid," I said. "We are the people of the book," the rabbi said. "Not of the phone book," said I. "Ours is a great tradition," said he, "and a wonderful history." "But history's over," I said. "We Jews are a creative people," the rabbi said. "Make something then," said I. "In science and in art," said he, "violinists and physicists have we." "Fiddle and physic indeed," I said. "Stubborn and stiff-necked man," the rabbi cried, "the pain you give me," said I. "Instead of bowing down," said he, "you go on in your obstinacy." "We Jews are that way," I replied.
Jewish history means Jewish values. Good values are universal. They are to be found distributed among all cultures. Love, loyalty, and compassion are very Jewish. But they can also be very Greek and very Chinese. Bad values are also universal. Hate, bigotry, and greed have no single national home. They are welcomed by people of many cultures. They have even been welcomed by Jews. But humanistic values flow naturally from Jewish history and from the Jewish experience. Sensitive Jews who are sensitive to their past cannot ignore the moral lessons of that past. We who have suffered so much from hate cannot become the champions of hate. We who have been the victims of bigotry cannot become the excluders of other peoples and other races. We who have felt the whip of our enemies' envy and greed cannot harden our hearts against the needy. If Jewish history could speak, it would proclaim a humanitarian ethic. If the Jewish experience could talk, it would guarantee the dignity of all men and women. To study Judaism is to hear these messages.
Jerusalem, The Book of Life. Jewish legend claimed that all of our deeds were recorded. Those who performed good deeds, repented of their sins, and lived a pious life would be written in the Book of Life for the coming year and would live to see another new year. Those whose names were not inscribed would die. The Book of Life opened with the first shofar sound on Rosh Hashanah, and it closed with the last shofar blast at the end of Yom Kippur.
Our deeds are important, not in a cosmic sense, but in a personal one. Life is more satisfying when we are the author, and human beings have significant power to steer their own lives. Sometimes we travel where we want to, and sometimes we fight the current, and sometimes a wave upends us into the river. If the water is challenging, it's not our fault if we get wet. But if we never try, if we sit on our paddle and hope the current goes the right way, if we coast through life without ever steering, even then we have made a choice and are responsible for whatever we get.
What great satisfaction from human success. The current gets no credit nor the wind, but rather we who propel and steer our boat to our destination. Success is no miracle. It is bringing our will into the real world.
These 10 days between shofars have been significant. We have begun a new page of our personal saga. Let us choose to leave a lasting memory of good choices, deeds whose impact will continue long after our chapter is concluded.
The rows talked back. The man sweeping the synagogue paused for a moment. He looked at the flowers lying about in disorder. What waste, he said to himself. Those roses had adorned the pulpit at a wedding an hour before. Now all was over and they were waiting to be discarded. The attendant leaning on his sweeper was lost in thought when suddenly he heard a strange sound. One of the roses replied to him. "Do you call this a waste?" the flower protested. What is life anyway? Yours or mine, but a means of service. My mission was to create some fragrance and beauty, and when I have fulfilled it, my life has not been wasted. And what greater privilege is there than to adorn a bride's way to her beloved? What greater privilege than to help glorify the moment when a bride and groom seal their faith in each other by entering the covenant of marriage?
Our little flower paused for a moment to watch the man's face and then continued with her discourse. Roses are like people. They live in deeds, not in time. My glory was but for a brief hour, but you should have seen the joy in the bride's face. I like to believe that I had something to do with it by creating a suitable setting for the moment of her supreme happiness. So don't grieve for me. My life has been worthwhile. Having spoken her little piece, the rose was once more silent. The attendant, startled from his reverie and a little wiser, pushed the sweeper again and continued with his work.
Remembrance of the beginnings of things. We shall remember the wheat stalk in the greenness of her youth, the time she stood erect with head to heaven. Thin was her blade, but straight and proud. And now bent is her head to the ground, for heavy is the gold of her ripeness, the crown of her full pregnancy. Beautiful are her seasons. We shall remember the tree in the middle of his spring. His blossoms were white and pink. Trembling sunbeams glimmered in him on the branch, and the sweet resin dropped to earth like the bride's tears on the day of her heart's joy. Now he stands in the abundance of his apples, carrying his beautiful burden motionless, knowing the spring of things to come. We shall surely remember these things in the change of the year's circuit and in the passage of day and night, how the moon was fragile and very full, then round and died, yet its youth would be renewed. We shall surely remember the beginning of our love, when she was tremulous as a fawn, a beautiful doe lowering her eyes, and there she has become fully grown, with her open face and her deep voice. Beautiful are her seasons. Zachor nizkor reshita havatenu, be'oda ruchuya ka'ayelet, ya'alat chen mashpelet einayim, v'hinei gadla ma'od, u'faneha galuyim, v'kola amok, yafot itoteha. If you're comfortable standing, could I ask you to please stand for just a moment? As Yom Kippur draws towards its close, we change our view from looking back to looking forward. We do not know what losses this year just begun holds in store for us. It has not been decided in advance or written in a book. And so, as we remember those of our loved ones from the past, we prepare ourselves also for the losses of the future. We know that this is our time in the world. We make the most of it by sharing our love, by telling those who are important to us how important they are, and by living life as if it is the most important time because it is. I invite us all to pause for a moment of silent reflection, memory, and hope. In the Hebrew Bible, in the book of Proverbs, we read, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, the memory of a good person is a blessing to us. Please be seated as we hear a song of love. Is life getting better or getting worse? It depends what you compare it to. Compared to 500 years ago, things look pretty good. 500 years ago, the average life expectancy was only 30. 1/3 of children died before age 1, and 3% of births resulted in the death of the mother. If you made it to your 20s, you would probably live to your late 40s. If you were an aristocrat, you could expect to make it to your 60s. Today in the United States, by contrast, life expectancy at birth is 77. Men 75, women 80. 99% of live babies celebrate their 5th birthday, and our maternal mortality rate is 0.03%. We live better and longer and more peacefully. Yes, despite all the violence in the world and in the news, we are much less likely to die violently than in our history. When I was in high school, I asked my history teacher, "In what era would you like to live?" And he said, "Right now, even if only for the dentistry." This high holidays, we have been fighting the feeling that we are doomed. When we feel like we might be doomed and everything is falling apart, we are not comparing ourselves to 500 years ago. We are thinking about what should be now, what could be now. Just a few years ago, before COVID, U.S. life expectancy was 2 years higher than it is today. And any maternal or child deaths are too many. Life expectancy is not the only metric for human thriving. How we feel is both subjective and real. If we take for granted how much better we have it today, we do not want to be smug and assume it will always be this way, to assume that life can track up or track even but never tracks downward, to assume that what is always will be. We should also not forget that our success can coexist with other people's suffering. What was Jewish life like 500 years ago? In 1500 CE, in the Muslim world, we were tolerated minorities who had to limit how high we built our synagogues. We could not blow our shofars too loudly or show our success too publicly, lest we uppity Jews be put back in our place. In Christian Europe, by 1500, we had been expelled from England, expelled from France and from Spain. We had been pogromed out of most of Germany by crusaders and Black Death scapegoating. We were welcomed into the Polish-Lithuanian Empire, but there we lived at the tender mercies of the local duke or prince. We spoke our own Jewish language. We were squeezed between noble and peasant. We were the quintessential other. Jewish life today, 500 years later. Today we are citizens with rights. We are integrated into our national cultures. The courts protect our rights. The police protect our property and our synagogues. Politicians fall over themselves to condemn anti-Semitism, even to accuse their opponents of being anti-Semitic. For all of its challenges, there is a Jewish state as a haven and as an advocate, a source of Jewish cultural creativity, and a locus for Jewish debate. As we heard last night, various Jewish sects debated the Jerusalem temple when it stood. So too with Jerusalem today. Of course, we are not comparing Jewish life today with Jewish life 500 years ago. We compare Jewish life today with Jewish life just 15 years ago or even 5 years ago. In the 1990s, just 30 years ago, it was the beginning of the Oslo peace process. A brighter future seemed possible for everyone in the Middle East. 2 Jews were named to the Supreme Court in 2 years, and no one batted an eye. A few years later, Orthodox Jew Joe Lieberman would have become vice president if not for all those mistaken Jewish votes for Pat Buchanan in Palm Beach County, Florida. The presidents of Harvard, Princeton, and Yale were all Jewish. Beautiful new Hillel buildings for campus Jewish life were opening. The worst Jewish communal news of the 1990s was that too many non-Jewish people loved us and married us. Today, in the 2020s, intermarriage is old news. There's even a Netflix series about a rabbi dating a non-Jewish woman, just got renewed for its 2nd season. It's called Nobody Wants This, but evidently enough people want it that it got a 2nd season. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict, well, that's worse than terrible. And anti-Semitism. And Israel and the Jewish vote. Now, I am not afraid to go anywhere in Chicago on Easter. I contacted our local police to let them know when and where our high holiday services would be held, and I received a warm and supportive response. In Detroit, when anti-Israel graffiti appeared on the offices of the Jewish Federation, the sheriff of Oakland County said, "If you come at our Jewish community, or for that matter at anyone in our Oakland County community, we will stand in front of them to protect them, and we will come for you." We American Jews are not living in 1500, nor in 1700, nor in 1938. We are certainly in hard times. 30 years ago, if someone had predicted we'd be facing all these problems in 2024, I would have called them a kvetch, a complainer. You may have noticed that certain among our people have a tendency to kvetch, to complain, to find something wrong with just about anything. We may no longer be the chosen people, we are surely the choosy people. All that kvetching, all that complaining goes back to an old Jewish problem. We compare the world to what it could be. After all, a perfect, all-knowing, all-powerful, benevolent God could solve any problem at any moment. As Woody Allen once said, if God does exist, he's an underachiever. Still, on the off chance that the Hebrew God would live up to his potential, rabbis created extensive liturgy to praise and petition and thank him 3 times a day, not counting all those blessings and Shabbat and the holy days. Traditional high holiday services are hours of flattery and apologies and requests and more flattery. The rabbis of the Talmud compared this world to the world to come, the days of the Messiah, a new Eden, as long as we pass the cosmic judgment. Life in this world could be nasty, brutish, and short. Yes, on Yom Kippur, we did hope to get sealed in the book of life for another year here. But in the end, Jewish religious thought admitted this world is less than we want, and it believed that the ultimate hope to do better was through supernatural intervention. I recall a story of a Jewish grandmother, a bubby, walking her grandchild on the beach. Along came a large wave that swept the child out to sea. And the bubby looked up to the sky and said, God, if you're there, I know I haven't been to synagogue in years. I don't follow any of the traditional commandments. I don't even believe in you 3 out of 4 days in a week. But if you'll do something to save my grandchild, I will change my life and devote it to you. Another large wave crashes onto the beach, and there is her grandson. She looks up at the sky and says, he had a hat. Now, a grandmother who can complain to God can complain to anyone about anything in any era. Remember, you may be paranoid, but that does not mean they are not after you. Our personality of being a stiff-necked people who complain, from wandering in the mythical Exodus to ordering in the modern Delhi, combine that with our history of persecution and our intergenerational trauma, they're all true. Yet it is impossible to claim that the problems we see today are only in our minds and not in reality, that they're simply the ghosts of Christians past. It is never good when public figures start dividing us into good Jews and bad Jews. For some progressive protesters, the good Jews are the ones who publicly denounce Israel and Zionism, and the bad Jews are everyone else, even the Israel critical, even those who promote coexistence and compromise, anyone who affirms any kind of Israel at all, anyone to the right of the righteous far left. That's a bad Jew. And for the MAGA faithful on the right, the good Jews are the ones who denounce DEI and liberalism. The good Jews support religion in public life, and good Jews are for Israel right or even more right no matter what. And the bad Jews, well, that's everyone else. For MAGA, the bad Jews are the synagogues that welcome the LGBTQ, the rabbis who fight for social justice, the Jews who support the separation of church and state and who care for the unfortunate and who love the stranger and the immigrant as themselves. Is an American Jewish golden age over, as some op-eds have proclaimed? Was it ever as golden as we thought it was? There were prices American Jews paid in their striving to make it in white American suburbia. Most Jewish immigrants who changed their names did not have it changed by a dumb immigration clerk at Ellis Island. Family court records in New York City show thousands voluntarily changed their family names to something less Jewish, less foreign, more American. The thought that the golden Medina, the golden land that had given them so much freedom from persecution and opportunity for peace and success, that this land would still hate them or limit them for their Jewishness, that was hard to swallow. Easier to blame a nameless clerk in family lore. The Anti-Defamation League was founded in 1915 after a Jewish man was accused of murdering a Christian child and then lynched. U.S. immigration doors were slammed shut in the 1920s, in part to keep out Eastern European Jews. Admissions quotas did the same for elite universities. Restrictive real estate covenants prevented Jews and other minorities from buying the houses they wanted into the 1970s. By the end of the 20th century, those limits were gone. Thousands of Jews from Israel and the former Soviet Union immigrated to the U.S. from the 70s through the 90s, and Jews moved into Kenilworth and Lake Forest. Golden Age was not absurd at all 30 years ago. In 2024, for all of our challenges, we have rights and legal protections and power that our ancestors never imagined. The latest Pew Forum survey of American Jews said it out loud in black and white publicly on the internet, so I can say it here. The Jewish population as a whole is doing well in America. 60% of American Jews have at least a bachelor's degree, compared to 30% in the general population. 1/3 of our households earn $150,000 or more in a year, compared to 1/10 of everyone else. Both presidential candidates have Jewish members of their nuclear families. Does this make us globalist elites, the MAGA enemy? Does this make us part of the establishment that radical progressives want to bring down? Yes and yes. Jewish success is like any success. Part hard work, part luck, part advantages, part talent, part mutual support. We will never succeed beyond envy and suspicion, and as long as we remain distinct, we can be a target for both. The first ADL survey of American Jewish anti-Semitism was run in 1964. Among other questions, they asked if people agreed with certain anti-Jewish tropes. For example, Jews have too much control and influence on Wall Street. Jews do not share my values. Jews don't care what happens to any but their own kind. The measurement for anti-Semitic was agreeing with 6 or more of those statements. In 1964, 29% of Americans passed that bar of agreeing to 6 or more. By the late 1990s, that went down to only 12%. And in 2014, on the 50th anniversary of that first study, it was only 9%. Today, in 2024, we are back up to 24%. We are not imagining it. Tensions over Israel are bleeding over into anti-Jewish hints and clear statements and threatening actions. Some of the most prestigious universities, the most progressive and diverse cities, have seen the worst anti-Israel protests that sometimes cross the line from criticizing Israel to advocating destroying it and its citizens and threatening other Jews in the process. The subtleties of critiquing Israel's actions while accepting its right to defend its citizens or simply to exist, the contradiction of supporting a Palestinian state while rejecting a Jewish one, those do not fit neatly into a chantable slogan. We must remember, we are not alone. This past May, Gallup asked Americans whether anti-Semitism is currently a problem in the U.S. 82% said it was a very serious or somewhat serious problem. Only 8% said not a problem at all. We are not alone. Thousands of people from other cultures and heritages have joined their lives to the Jewish people. Some have become Jewish, and their families of origin know it. Some have married someone Jewish, and their families of origin know it. In the early 20th century, American Jews had to start their own law firms and hospitals because others would not hire them. Today, millions of non-Jews work with Jews, or work for Jews, or employ Jews. This experience is not always smooth and easy. We have mostly figured out Christmas parties and Secret Santa, but there are still prayer circles and meeting scheduling issues. Some of you may know that this year I co-edited a book on contemporary humanistic Judaism. It will be published in January by the University of Nebraska Press and the Jewish Publication Society. Guess when the final proofed pages and index were due to the University of Nebraska Press? Rosh Hashanah. But we are not alone, and that has made things better. Some years ago, my mother was on a cruise ship, and she sat down with the people she was going to be sitting with the entire cruise for dinners, and her companion next to her said something off color like, I went to buy the tickets for this trip and I had to Jew them down, I had to negotiate it down. As my mother is about to leap on him with her full ADL fury, his wife smacks him on the shoulder and says, "You idiot, your son-in-law is Jewish." So who corrected him? It was his wife. His son-in-law is Jewish, not was Jewish, didn't convert. His grandchildren will have Jewish connections and Jewish family. This is positive change filtering backwards as well as towards the future. 100 years ago, in 1924, when immigration doors closed, 70% of American Jews were foreign-born. One American Jewish writer remembered thinking as a kid that when you got older, you grew into an accent, because everyone old had accents. In 2024, 90% of American Jews are American-born. And for almost 2/3 of American Jews, both of their parents were born here. We know the laws. We know the customs and the culture. We help write the laws and litigate the laws. We help create the customs and the culture. In September 1964, the same year that almost 30% of Americans held anti-Semitic attitudes, Fiddler on the Roof opened on Broadway. An early title for the show was Where Papa Came From, showing that immigrant generation. By fall 1965, Fiddler was smashing all the records, but a question was raised. Should Tevye take the stage on Yom Kippur? There had been plenty of Friday night and Saturday daytime performances, but it was Yom Kippur, and Tevye was a traditional Jew. And this was the same Yom Kippur that Sandy Koufax would not pitch in the World Series. Show producer Hal Prince, himself Jewish, put it directly. Tevye has made more friends for the Jews than Yom Kippur. And the show must go on. Today, many Jewish actors and actresses keep their Jewish names and wear their Jewishness publicly, even grappling publicly with their challenges related to Israel or Jewish tradition. If our Jewish disagreements today are more public, that is a sign of being rooted, of feeling comfortable enough to air our dirty laundry without fearing being sent back somewhere else. Certain fields, like creative writing, for example, have seen definite problems. Exclusion, being canceled, litmus tests, that good Jew, bad Jew challenge. And similarly, some university departments and colleges as a whole have been more conflicted or less conflicted for Israeli or just Jewish academics than others. But in all of those circumstances, we are able to seek allies, and we are not alone. Could it get worse? So far, the phrase globalize the intifada has largely been a slogan or a motivation for graffiti. It could get worse. It could always get worse. A fair part of Jewish culture is based on the assumption that it could always get worse. The past is not always prologue. History does not always rhyme. We can ruin the present by fearing the future. This high holiday season, we have faced our fears that we are doomed, that everything is falling apart, and we have found reason to hope, actions to take, attitudes to assume in response to these challenges. Perhaps the best piece of advice I can offer, something not deeply rooted in Jewish culture, is this: calm down. Maybe it will be worse, maybe it will not. Being miserable in anticipation makes it worse, no matter what happens. This school year, campus protests that cross the line into advocating violence have been responded to much better, though the widening conflict with Hezbollah and Iran will have ripple effects. If Israel attacks the Iranian oil industry and gas prices go up, who will be blamed? If Israel successfully shifts the balance of power by weakening Iran's proxies in Lebanon and Gaza and Yemen, will that lead to increased cooperation with those who oppose Iran? At this point, we cannot know what the future holds for them or for us. We can prepare for a possible worse tomorrow without ruining today. As poet Wendell Berry put it in The Peace of Wild Things, when despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. I wish everyone here a year of health, of happiness, a year of peace, a Shana Yoter Tova, a better year in this new year. A few brief announcements. First, I would like to thank the readers in our service today. They were Rick Bolnick, Ellen Shepard, Elise Schaefer and Gabe Schaefer, Aliza and Nick Werner, Mark and Dawn Friedman, Brad Malice, Renee and Noah Levine, and Michelle Fishman and Alexa Fishman. As always, you're welcome to take our service booklets home with you if you like. If not, please set them on the credenza on your way out and make sure to return your name tags as well as you're leaving. I'll say one more time that as you're leaving, please make a right turn onto Half Day Road. The left turn is technically illegal. They will ticket you if they catch you. So better to make the right turn and then either do a U-turn or turn in the office complex and turn around so you can make a legal left turn to go east. The blue sheets in your service booklets thank the many people who made this event possible. One person they do not thank, because he didn't put his name on the sheet, is our administrator, Jeremy Owens. He's not here to hear our appreciation, but I want to make sure to express our appreciation for his incredibly hard work to make these services organized, successful, and a wonderful experience. And the other people who deserve thanking explicitly are the members of our choir and our choir director. They provide an invaluable part of our service. As much as I appreciate Andrea's thanking me for creating it, I don't create it in a vacuum. I create it in partnership with our choir and with our music director. And so I want to thank them by name. I want to thank our accompanists, Boris Krivoshein, Larry Dworsky, Laura Burke, Lee Kessler, Paul Vanderwerf, and David Harris. I want to thank our soloists, Melissa Arning, Kimberly Gunderson, and Todd Von Felker. And thank the members of our choir, Warren Abend, Mitch Apley, Simon Apley, Anthony Bellotti, Rick Bolnick, Ken Burke, Laura Burke, Irene Chase, Jessica Fisher, Susie Garfield, Rick Henriksen, David Hirsch, Ricky Katz, Emma Kowalenko, Lynn Miller, Sandra Schechner, Lori Schiller, Ellen Shepard, Jim Shepard, Leah Sosowitz, and Victoria Stamova. You've done a wonderful job through all of our services, restraining your applause after their marvelous performances, but now is the time to thank them for their work. And of course, a deep thank you to Ellen Apley, the director of our choir, our music director for the congregation. It's wonderful to partner with both a professional colleague and a friend. As the conclusion of Yom Kippur draws near, consider this an end and a beginning. The book closes on the past year and new pages await our pen. We will write the book of our future with our energy, our emotion, and our enthusiasm, and our commitment. Together, let us resolve to make the most of our new possibilities. And so I invite us all to sing and wish each other L'Shana Tova, to a good year. One last time, I wish you Shana Tova. Please wish Shana Tova to the people near you.